looking forward to a wonderful weekend. Well, let's all hope so. It's an early start on Saturday to find out whether that's going to be a red weekend or not. But to discuss all that and more, I've got Kieran Molyneux, I've got Harriet Pryor, I've got Mike Bancole. In part one, we're going to talk a little bit about the press conference, react to that, and also a little bit on the Deloitte Money League, exciting stuff. Liverpool shooting up, which in theory is a good thing, but as ever, caused a few people to moan as well. In part four, we're going to look ahead to Chelsea, and we've got a couple of inserts for those of you listening as a podcast as well. So first of all, Harriet Pryor spoke to Emma Sanders a little bit about the state of the LFC women's team at the moment and things to look forward to, if that is the phrase, for the rest of the season. Also, I spoke to Katie Alex, who's a brilliant Liverpool artist who came in last year, who's got something really exciting to announce today. So she came in to do it with us, which was very nice of her indeed. But before all that, I'll start with you, Mike. Jurgen's held his press conference. He was asked a lot about spending as ever, said some interesting stuff on the Chelsea spending, talked about Bajcetic a little bit and suggested that basically he's not going to hold him back because he looks ready, which is very exciting, and also reflected on the fact that it's 1,000 games, which is an incredible achievement for any manager. Some of them don't get 10. There's one across Stanley Park who I don't think is going to get to 1,000, if I'm honest. But Jurgen has, and good on him for that.
Yeah, he has, and remarkable that he's had so many of those games with us. And yeah, things aren't going as well now as we would hope, as he would hope. But for a lot of us, especially if you're a fan my age, sort of mid to late 20s, he's like the manager that's taking you from like being maybe university all the way to kind of like being in your late 20s, and so that those years are your fun years, the 2 years you have in the time of your life. And Jurgen Klopp's been a big part of that. And let's hope that as this season kind of goes on, we are able to kind of capture some form and return to being a Jurgen Klopp side, because I think at the moment we aren't particularly playing like a Jurgen Klopp side. I mean, there are so many things that are obviously worrying, and the Brighton game felt like a culmination of all of those things. But yeah, it's been so great to have him as a manager for so long, and looking forward to many more years of Jurgen Klopp and Liverpool.
Yeah, many more years, hopefully, Harriet, and years of success, which is what we all want. Mike said something interesting there about, how long he's been in our lives, and for I guess for you, pretty much all your adult life has been with Jurgen Klopp, and for Dortmund fans, it must have been all they knew was Jurgen, and they had one bad year, and obviously he goes on and. I think they left a bit, maybe sort of thinking back to that, and you see a little bit of that now. I think with our fan base, where we are struggling a little bit. We get that good win on Tuesday, and Jurgen's been here so long, we maybe forget a little bit what was before.
Yeah, it's funny because I was saying before that sort of one game has the ability to change the outlook and change the momentum, and you're going into that game and you're thinking, God, I really don't want to watch this. It's Wolves in a third round FA Cup replay, and then it has the ability to just completely change the mood. But yeah, it's interesting. 7 years of Jurgen Klopp and 1,000 games later, and people are still sort of lack the ability to be long-sighted and to take a long-sighted approach on things, because I just can't believe that there's people that don't back this manager still after everything he's achieved, everything he's brought to the club, the synergy that exists between him and the club, him and the culture, him and the city. And then, you still have people questioning whether he's the right person to get us out of a situation. And I think at the moment, there's obviously a bit of a disconnect, isn't there, between Jurgen Klopp's style of play and how he wants to set up a football team, and maybe the personnel that he has available. And a lot of that, it has got to do with the fact that a lot of what he does relies on running and relies on legs and distance. And the team is just a bit knackered this year, and it's difficult for him. But yeah, I have no doubt that he's the right person to sort of bring us back to all the sort of past few years and the success that we've had, and absolutely love him. 1,000 games, I'd definitely take 1,000 more.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not quite sure he's got 1,000 more in him.
He would pass out with that, wouldn't he? He'd be like, no, I'm out.
But hopefully he's got a few more sort of for Liverpool at least. And it was funny, he was asked for to give his advice to himself 22 years ago, which is when sort of this 1,000 games started. He talks about how different it was, analysing games on DVDs, and when you wanted to know the outside world, thought you'd ask or read the newspaper. Criticism being easy to avoid. Now it's everywhere. He says, oh my God, everyone with no expertise has opinions, which is the new Anfield Wrap strapline. But, it is the case, isn't it, that everyone wants to tell Jurgen, what he's doing wrong at the moment, and this and that, and why aren't you playing him? But for them, it's them who's got to find the solutions. It's them with all the information and stuff like that, and it's them who are looking at it, aren't they, and thinking, well, what is it that we need to do to make this Liverpool team, like Mike says, look more like the one that we've got?
Well, first of all, when you talk about when Klopp started out, and I don't know whether managers like Klopp would have been given the time of day in this day and age. I mean, to go through the ranks and from teams like Mans, and then obviously big leagues like Dortmund and Liverpool. It's a long time. It is a completely different game that we live in now. But I wouldn't have anybody else in charge of this club. I've always said this since he came through the door. There's not a manager in the world that I swap him for, and I still think that there's not a manager on the planet that I'd swap him for. And even though things haven't been exactly how we want them lately, I couldn't pick anybody else to fix the problem and to take us back to trophies very, very soon.
Well, hopefully this season, and that remains the plan. And he's through in the FA Cup, Mike. So that you always a better chance of winning something if you're still in the hat. And he is through against Wolves. And we saw a lot more of what you were talking about. You mentioned before that it hasn't really looked like a Jurgen Klopp team. Well, that side looked more like it. We don't want to get carried away. It's a 1-0 with a wonder goal away at a team who was struggling, in the Premier League a little bit. But still, the bite that they showed, the speed that they were moving the ball, and some of the play looked much more like it, from what we expect from a Liverpool team and a Jurgen Klopp team.
Yeah, I think the Wolves game was a reminder of just what we are as a side, and what we can be as a side. And I think what we've been missing throughout most of the season really is that hunger, that aggression, and that desire. And Jurgen Klopp has spoken about it in the past. But I think Pep Guardiola spoke about it yesterday. Since he won the game 4-2, and he called out his players for showing a lack of hunger and desire in the game. And I think ultimately what's happened to both sides is you strive for perfection every season. You have to break 90 points every season. And it can be hard to kind of recapture intensity, that desire, year in, year out. And I don't for 1 second think it's a deliberate thing. I don't think players are deliberately not showing that hunger and that desire, but you can only climb the mountaintop so many times. And I think what the young players showed, the likes of Badger, and Elliott, is that they are going to be crucial for us moving forward because they have a lot to prove. They have it all to earn. Unlike the likes of Jordan Henderson and Fabinho and others who have climbed the mountaintop and won everything for Liverpool. Elliott hasn't, really been involved in sides that have won a lot. He won the FA Cup and the League Cup for us last season, but I'm talking about the kind of big honours, and Badge is really just coming into his own this season. So that hunger, that desire that they showed when they played, and then Carvalho too when he played the other night as well, that's what we need moving forward. And I actually hope that, similarly to the 2021 season, where we kind of put faith in Nat Phillips and Reece Williams towards the back end of that season, I hope we do see the manager put faith in those young players who showed hunger, who showed a level of poise at times as well, and just looked comfortable at that level. He looked really comfortable against a Wolves side who are growing in confidence, who have been doing a lot better recently. So I think Wolves was a good start, and it is more of what we want to see in this Liverpool side. But I just really hope that the young players form the bedrock of our side moving forward, because that hunger, that desire they showed is so important. You can't have Jurgen Klopp's side without that hunger and desire.
No, absolutely. And it's been, part of the identity, Harriet, of what has made us so special. And, the younger players, naturally show that, I guess. You know what I mean? If you've not played as much, you're not quite as weary, maybe not quite as many miles in the legs, you are going to go on and the pitch and try and sort of show everything you've got. And there's a few young players recently who have shown that for Liverpool. But Bacic is the one on everyone's lips. It feels like at the moment, and his composure and how well he's played. And it was interesting hearing Jurgen talk about him and talk about his suitability for a game like this. And he didn't necessarily say he would pick him, but he certainly didn't rule him out. And I think the line was, when he doesn't look like he needs to be held back, which just shows that he's showing that everything that he's showing to Jurgen Klopp, in training and in the matches as well, as that he belongs at this level.
Yeah, well, I think midfield's a bit of a sort of cursed word at the moment, isn't it? And any player that comes in and actually manages to sort of look like they're doing their job in midfield will automatically impress, because those are the issues and where the issues in the squad are at the moment. And I think he came in, and I sort of was looking afterwards and writing a bit and doing a preview for the game at the weekend. And I just looked at his position and how tucked in he was to the centre-backs. I think that was really clever play from him, because he basically put himself in a position where he didn't want to get caught out. He was coming in, he knew he had a job to do. He knew his job was to play in that sort of holding and protective role, and he did exactly that. And I think that's why he was sort of well placed to get in any last minute tackles and to just make sure he was always in the right position. And that's what really impressed me about him in the game. But yeah, you see with all the young players coming through that they have that sort of sense of confidence, and that's what the manager absolutely instills in them, that they can come in, they can slot into the team and be basically, you know, on par with all the other players that have got so much more experience. But that's probably where also the downfall of the team is at the moment, because you've got these younger players who arguably like are proving that they should be in the starting 11, and then you've got obviously at the other end of the spectrum players that are slightly underperforming, that, you know, like Henderson and Fabinho, that aren't on the form that you'd expect from them. And we just need a bit of middle ground, don't we? And I think that's probably what we're crying out for now, is a couple of players that are sort of 25, 26 that will kind of transform that midfield area. But yeah, definitely in terms of the youngsters we've had, I've been really impressed with him, and Harvey Elliott as well, because what confidence when the team confidence is so low, just to take that shot and to score like that, and him falling to the ground at full time was also particularly funny. It was like we just won the Champions League final, and it's like, guys, it's the way it was in an FA Cup game. But it's because it meant more, didn't it? Like it was more than just that. It was all the, you know, the context around it. It felt like a bigger win than it probably was in the context. But I was into it anyway.
I mean, we'd have took a ground at 1-0.
Exactly.
I mean, when me and you were in the freezing cold in Brighton, Keo, nursing hangovers, and, you know, from a nice night out together on Friday, it didn't look like Liverpool had a 1-0 in them ever again. So I was with Harvey Elliott on the floor at the end, sort of celebrating. I don't know about you.
Yeah, well, we said, didn't we, on Friday night at the show, that if Liverpool are going to get a result at Brighton, we just need to get through it. It mightn't be the prettiest of performances, and it might, you know, we might have to win ugly. Even though we look better at Wolves, it's still miles away from where we want to be. But it was better, and it was a 1-0 win, and we got it over the line. And see what Harriet says. I know where they're coming from. It was just they needed something to change, and going through in the cup probably felt like a big moment for them. But in terms of how we looked, it was nice to have somebody in midfield, not putting too much pressure on this. They were saying playing, but playing. I'm playing tomorrow. I think having somebody who looked like they wanted to run in midfield and close gaps and be in people's faces, I think he just looked a breath of fresh air. And there's a reason why everyone's been talking about him all week and sharing clips of him and what he done in that Wolves game. It's what our midfield been crying out for. So I potentially will play tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll do a little bit more on the team in this, the second part of this, if you're listening live, and part 4 if you're listening as a podcast. I just want to pick up on a couple more things from the press conference, and I'll come to you, Mike. He was obviously asked about Chelsea's investments. He said he's not quite sure how they're doing it, but it is very impressive. He was asked a little bit about how it compared to his own, and I'll just read these quotes out here. I can't see investment stopping in the future, so that means we do have to do it as well. I believe in coaching, development and team building 100%, but meanwhile the managers out there, they are all good and they believe in that as well. So if we start spending, then if they start spending and if we don't spend, you have a problem. I'm not sure Chelsea can do that for 10 years now. And it's an interesting point, isn't it? Because, you know, the manager has tried to be fairly consistent on this, where he said, you know, spending isn't the be all and end all, but we do need to make sure that we're bringing quality in. And this point around, you know, other managers is completely right. I've never known a time where the Premier League, there's been so many top managers here. You know, there's you know, if you look at someone like Emery, who, you know, I think is a fantastic manager who's won things, who's won European competitions, you know, rocking up at Aston Villa. And no offence to Aston Villa, I'm just talking about where they are now and where they were sort of where he took over. It feels like, you know, there's 8 to 10 clubs in the Premier League with a manager who could be, you know, managing Champions League sides very easily, and then some of the others I haven't mentioned have got really interesting young managers who are developing and doing well. And so I guess what I'm saying is it's not as easy as having the best coaching and the best ideas, because there's plenty of that knocking around, and they are supplementing it with the spending too, and that's the point that Jurgen made.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the Premier League is very much living up to its branding. It just feels like a really competitive league at the moment, especially with the where we are and where City are. Probably not we're definitely not at our best. That goes without saying, but City, I think it's clear for most people who've watched this season, they aren't at their best either, and their manager recognises that. And I think the problem a lot of the typical big six sides have now is when they do have that drop off in form, there are just so many teams with such good managers who are spending a lot of money that can quickly take your spot. You know, Newcastle now look well on course to finish in the top 4. They've got a really good young manager in Eddie Howe, who probably falls into the young talented manager bracket you mentioned earlier. You know, you have someone like Brighton with De Zerbi, who's come in and replaced Potter and unarguably improved Brighton in some ways. They look at a more ruthless side under De Zerbi. So there are just so many good young managers, so many good and experienced managers who won so much, and these clubs are all investing. And I think the manager was, you know, in the summer he backed his lads. You know, he gave the interview with Neil where he says, "What type of midfielder do I need?" And he was, you know, quite strong about not needing to sign a midfielder. And I think he has, you know, rightly understood the need for a midfielder. And there is, you know, who knows what's going to happen in January, but there's definitely in the summer rumours of quite a few bodies in that area coming in. So I think the manager, you know, he doesn't like transfer talk at the best of times. Like when we were flying and winning every week, he hated it. And he hates it now. I think he finds it disrespectful to his group. And actually, there have been times when he's been a bit prickly towards journalists who've asked him about midfielders and who've asked him questions about midfield. And I wouldn't say that's like a personal attack on a journalist. I do think for the manager, he finds talk of incoming players a disrespect to the current group he has. And that's ultimately who he is as a man. He's a very loyal man. But I do think deep down now, and I think privately, discussions between Jurgen and senior management, they would understand the need for a midfielder, which is really important. A need for recruitment in other parts of the squad as well, I'm sure. So I think for us to stay competitive, transfers are a necessity. And, you know, we trust this club. We trust the kind of the powers that be to sign the right players that are going to improve us. So yeah, signings are important.
Signings are important, Harriet, and listen, you'll go down to Sky at the moment every week and doing talking transfers, so we can't sort of talk it down too much. Transfer talk. Sorry, I'm getting my show sort of confused here. So
I didn't even notice. To be fair, just something about transfers and talking.
There's a lot going on, and so we all know it's you know it's a big part of football now, and it's a big source of interest for people. I think it's slightly less interesting to Jurgen Klopp than it is to other people, but then, you know, he knows that he doesn't want to get left behind. You know, we talked about some of the players that Chelsea have recently bought, and obviously sort of you know big admirers of, and you know, be interested if we see Mudryk this weekend. You know, we obviously won't see João Felix because he's been, you know, ruled out, but he was asked about him as well. And I think there's an awareness, although Jurgen did say, you know, listen, you don't have to rebuild your team every year, you know, to sort of point out that, you know, you're not throwing everything out and starting again every time it looks slightly wrong. But, you know, the idea that, you know, new talent coming to Liverpool, you know, is going to be a vital thing, making sure that, you know, we get ourselves back to the top and stay there.
Yeah, well, I think people look at Chelsea and sort of, rather than looking actually at their squad, they just look at the amount of money that they've spent, which is actually ridiculous amounts on actually not that many players, and think, oh, I want to be spending money on all those players. But you don't want that scattergun approach. I mean, you speak to Chelsea fans now and they're still saying that they need loads of new midfielders and there's still so much work needs to be done in their team. And actually, I think on the balance of things, and I know a lot of people disagree with this and do disagree with this, but our squad's not in a terrible place. I do think it only needs sort of a couple of new faces to come in, because you look on the back line, and I think obviously Trent, Robertson, their ages, Canate, there doesn't really need to maybe one new centre back in the next couple of years. Allison, I don't think many people want to replace. It is mainly that midfield area, and that's the area now where you just can really tell that teams are just targeting and finding it so easy to play through. So yeah, transfers are important, and no manager is going to like talking about them. And like Mike already said, I think he's a manager in particular that's really loyal to his teammates and also really keen to look internally for solutions. And we saw that with the sort of COVID season when the back line was decimated. His sort of go-to was try and look internally who he had first, look at the younger players, and then only, you know, later on did we sort of panic by Kabak and then Ben Davies. So he kind of wants to see what he's got and work it out. But I think, like we've touched on as well, he knows now that it's time for a few new faces to come in through the door, and he definitely wouldn't be averse to that. But it's finding the right players for the right price, and actually in January that's particularly hard. So I don't know if we can expect sort of any this January, but hopefully in summer at least a few new people come in, because definitely think we need it now.
And obviously that the pressure in some circles, you know, gets ramped up, Kieran, when you see things like the Deloitte Money League that comes out this week, and Liverpool have gone from 7th to 3rd in that, which is a good thing. Let's be clear, Liverpool making more money is good, but there's people making, you know, noises that, well, if all this money is coming through, then maybe we should be spending it now. we'll wait for the club accounts, which will give us more information, and maybe they are spending it all, and we'll see sort of where that is, or maybe they've made big profits last season, and then there'll be extra questions there. I don't know how much this stuff is on your radar, is on fan radars really. The Deloitte Money League wasn't really a thing when I grew up, so. I mean, when you play the Sandon tomorrow, will there be loads of Deloitte Money League chat, do you think? Or it'll be, is Naby Keita playing midfield?
I think the reason why everyone's talking about it is because people want to see players come in. And that's with the area where we look at what is the club making, what is the club spending. And you just said then, I think it's important to see what the club are spending, whether it's profits or where they're at with that. Because like it or not, like FSG or not, they only spend what we make, and it's as simple as that. They don't pump money into the club. They never pump money into the club in that way. So we do need to see that. And I agree with Harriet. However, however much we might need players coming in at the minute, like how many of these players in the squad are going to be there next season? There's going to be most of them. So therefore, we can't just go down the road of everyone rubbish, and we need to get rid of everyone and sign a whole new team, because I don't think that's the case. However, I do think 2 or 3 players coming in could probably give everybody a lift. I mean, I know I was sort of tired at the end of last season, and then I know City haven't been too great, but when I seen City sign Haaland and potentially go up another level, it took a little bit of wind out of my sails after playing every single game last season, and then thinking we've got to do it again, and we've got to do it better. So I think seeing players come in might give everybody a lift, from the squad itself to the fans to people asking the same old questions in the interview room. It is getting a little bit frustrating for some people, but like Harriet said, I don't think it's a case of the whole team needs to go. It's a couple of players coming in could lift it, and I think Klopp knows that. I don't think there's anybody else better than Klopp who knows this team and knows what it needs. So if we're all seeing it and we're watching it in Anfield or on the telly, and we can see that there's issues around players or positions, I think the manager definitely knows it.
And just finally on the Deloitte stuff, and finally on part one, Mike, I did sort of joke about it when I introduced this, but it is a good thing that Liverpool are so high, because it shows how well run we are. And for people my age, the idea of Liverpool making more money each season than Manchester United was, we were so far off, and it was unreal. They were the kings of commercial deals, and obviously they had this huge stadium which put them ahead in terms of ticket revenue and things like that. For Liverpool to go above Man United does show, whether people like it or not, just how well run we've become as a football club that we are now. The third highest revenue. We had the third highest revenue in world football. The key is for us to stay there, and that happens through continued success, and continued success happens through investment. We are not in a position to be as creative as our commercial partners as others are, and so it is success on the pitch. It's reaching Champions League finals. It's competing for trophies that does it for us.
Yeah, we can't enter into dodgy partnership deals that other clubs do. I won't name the clubs. I'll leave it to the imagination
Thanks, Mike.
of our of our listeners and viewers here. But no, I just think it is a sign of, in many ways, of how far we've come under Jurgen Klopp. Jurgen Klopp again was it's the manager lots of us, my age have kind of grown up with almost. I can't remember how old I was when Jurgen Klopp took over, like 20 or something, and long time since then, and the club has grown into, I never would have thought, especially given how much United traumatized me in my kind of adolescence, that we would be so far ahead of them in that sense, commercially. They did seem as kind of big conglomerate, as big superpower, and here we are. So it is a sign of how far we've come as a club, and let's hope we can end this season strongly, because a lot of this, being high in the Deloitte League, which is not what we want. We want to win trophies and have good days out of Wembley, like the FA Cup final, like the League Cup final. But these little markers, like being top, being high up in this league, it is like part of the success. So let's hope that we end this season strongly. We can go on some kind of run, not like a 13 games in a row winning run, but a run that puts us into contention at least for the top 4 come April and May. And that success is really important for us. We do need to be in the Champions League. We do need to be in Champions League, partly because that will help us with the investments and with the signing of players. So, yeah, let's hope for more success, and staying ahead of Man United in any league table is an exciting thing for me.
Above Man United in everything, please, especially on the pitch and in the league table. We'll see if we can do something about that at 12:30 tomorrow. Okay, we're going to have a little break now. As I say, if you are listening to this podcast, you've got a couple of inserts that me and Harriet have done in the week. But if you are listening live, we're going to be back to you very soon. Okay, let's look ahead to Chelsea then, and I'll start with you, Keo. It's two teams who aren't where they expected to be. I think Harriet mentioned before that we're writing stuff. You'd normally be looking at this as a top of the title clash, or at least two teams competing for Champions League places. Now it's 9th v 10th, which is slightly unusual. They've got a few new players in. We're not quite sure what to expect from them. Who's going to start. There's a few back. Seeing Kante in training was just dead funny. Like, of course he is. I don't think he's going to start, but it was just like, I think he only plays against Liverpool now. But despite the league possession, I guess what I'm saying is they are a bit of a dangerous outfit because we don't know what we're going to get from them.
No, that's the first thing I said to Harriet just before we started the show. I'd seen something about Kante in one of the WhatsApp groups. I was like, is he playing? No.
He's running. He's back running, so it'd be a big shout to throw him in. But who the fuck knows?
Also, like how I was asked, like I'm
Sky
aware
Sports Harriet Pryor.
You've got all the exclusives, Harriet.
I know
You've been in London.
You've been in London. You've been to the training ground. You've spied over the fence. You know what's going on.
Sorry for asking you, but I wanted to know because I know he has a storm. But like I said, I don't think he's going to be in there.
No.
But you're right, John. You're right. I mean, they're not playing too great. They've had a bad patch, similar to ourselves. And they've brought players in. I know one of them's not going to play due to getting sent off. The other one, I don't know too much about, but they paid some big money for him. So their fans will be looking forward to seeing him. Their manager will be looking forward to seeing him. So, I mean, I don't know which way it's going to go. But I hope it goes Liverpool's way. I hope we come out fighting. I hope we close them gaps and we're closing down properly and we look more like the Liverpool that we want to see every week. I'm not scared of them. I'm not saying that, but I am wary of how the season's going and how their season's going and how both teams are going to be desperate to win. So we'll just Liverpool turn up and do them over.
Yeah, let's hope so. They're not looking as sharp at the moment, sort of similar to us, Mike. So there is an opportunity if we are at it, with the unfamiliarity of the team. I thought he might have a couple more back, but apparently Graham Potter's done his press conference and said there'll be no Chilwell and no James who are lads who are sort of close going back for them. So they're going to be a little bit thrown together, the Chelsea, and if we don't give them any time to settle, I think if we allow them to creep into the game, I think that'll be dangerous. But if we're at it from the off, which I know isn't easy when you're not playing well yourself and at 12:30 and everything, but we are at it from the off and we look much more like it, then I think we can get up in the game and then the crowd comes into it, and I think that could see us through.
Well, it has to be a similar start to the start we had against Wolves, where from minute one against Wolves, you could see that Liverpool side were on it. Like against Brighton, it was a really slow start, and we allowed Brighton to take control of the game. And look, Chelsea aren't in fine fettle themselves, but if we allow them to go into the game, they have quality players, players who we don't even know about their skill sets too much. Modric and some other players who are unknown quantities in some ways. They have quality to hurt us. It is the big issue. So I think it's important for us at home, 12:30 kickoff. Anfield, let's get straight at them really, and let's play like a Jurgen Klopp side. Let's be intense. Let's not concede the first goal after 3 minutes, please. Thank you. Let's not do that again because it is getting really boring doing that every single game. So if we could start well, hope maybe even score a goal after 3 minutes rather than concede a goal after 3 minutes. That would be nice. And I don't know. It feels a bit like the City game where we're going into this a big game. Well, big in terms of the sides and the history these two sides have, rather than where they are on the league table. It's still a big game. It's Liverpool against Chelsea, and it's one Anfield will hopefully be up for. We'll be up for. We'll have a good time, and hopefully we get a much needed win.
Yeah, that is the hope. So how would you go about it, Harriet? I mean, Jurgen said he doesn't listen to anyone, but
definitely not to me.
You might listen to Sky Sports, Harriet.
Exactly. That is my point.
Right, are you three all done now? We good.
As Jurgen said in his press conference, he doesn't listen to anyone without expertise, but they won't put just anyone on the telly. What team are you picking?
Yeah, I wrote the preview and I was like sort of going through the team in my head, and it's quite difficult actually because there's actually quite a lot of like variations that he could do. But I think the back line I'd stick with Gomez, just because obviously he was the one that probably in the last two games had the better of the games out of him and Matip. Obviously Matip had a little bit of a nightmare against Brighton, so I liked the balance between Gomez and Konate. So I think I'd stick with them. Obviously the fullbacks kind of themselves and they've had a rest in midweek. Obviously Alisson goal. Forward, I'm going to come back to midfield. I know it's not really conventional, but I think that's where like the biggest questions are. Forward, I just go pretty standard. Hopefully Nunes is back in. Someone's put in the comments, hope he finds the back of the net. Didn't he literally score in the game before, like the last game he played? So I think he knows where it is. I'd put him in the middle, Salah right, and I'd still be playing Gakpo on the left. I think obviously he's not come into like an ideal team, but he's been okay. I mean, I think he's got a lot to prove, hasn't he? And he's going to have to be given time to do that. And then in midfield, I'd like to see back. I always say his name wrong. Bacetic. We're going to go with that. But I don't. I still
can't do Gakpo.
I think he'll put Fabinho back in, but I think he'll keep the other two the same. So I liked the Thiago and Naby sort of link up. I thought that worked quite well. So that would be the team that I would pick. But Klopp is mad, isn't he? He doesn't listen to anyone. Probably just sort of goes, what is everyone else saying? I'm going to do the opposite because that will work. So yeah, I think whoever plays though, like we've sort of mentioned, it's just no gifts, like no early gifts and no doing anything stupid, because I feel a bit for the manager, because in some press conferences, especially after Brighton, he's like, yeah, you can make all these plans, but when players are just giving away the ball stupidly, he didn't say that, but when you're making mistakes like that, you can't just basically cop for every single mistake that the players make. You can't cop for giving the ball away in a ridiculous area like every single time. So none of that would be nice. But yeah, that's the team I think I'd go for.
Kia, would you do any difference? Would you think he'll do any difference?
I wouldn't, I mean, is it I'm not struggling saying his name myself, Bacetic or however you pronounce it. I'll probably Google that as soon as the show's finished instead of before it. But yeah, Thiago, and I probably, although he has his critics, I probably will placate him in the midfield. And I don't think you can mess about too much up front. Salah, Gakpo. I mean, Gakpo looks silky with the ball. He looks like his touch is good in tight spaces. And I want to see him more. But Nunes, I think he's always looking for a layoff and a cross. I'd like to get as many minutes with them two on the pitch to start forming something. So, yeah, and then the obvious back four and the goalkeeper.
Yeah, I think the only thing, there's a couple for me, Mike, a couple of question marks. I think I'd maybe like to see Elliott again in the front three, but it's just the sort of the combination, and I understand the desire to pick, the big three, if you like, if you want to call them that, sort of Gakpo, Nunes and Salah, and, because they're the most experienced, and we want to sort of start building combinations between them, and also, if Elliott comes into the team, then it's a question of what you do with Salah. But I thought he was so good, Elliott, on Tuesday night, and gets his goal. And because of the critics sort of he's had, and to bring him in and then take him back out again might seem a little harsh. So I'd like to start Elliott. I'm just not quite sure how I do it. So maybe you can solve it for me.
Yeah, I can. I think I can, because I would start Salah through the middle with Nunes and have Elliott off the right, and have it so like it's kind of like a Salah and Nunes almost like a front three, and Elliott joins them at times and might just play off them. So, maybe Jurgen might listen to me, who knows. But
I do in the comments, he wants Nunes on the left. And tell him to, I think he means to just run towards.
But yeah, I do think that we aren't in a position to not reward players who are performing well, given so many players aren't performing well. So I don't think it would be the best message to the group to drop the likes of Bacetic and Elliott, given how well they played. It wasn't that they just played well or did okay. Like, they played exceedingly well against the Wall side again, who are improving, who are at home. It was under the lights. It was a tricky game. It was one of those games you could lose. So I think we're in a position now where we have to play those players and let them lose their place almost. So I would let Elliott go again. Someone who, I think Elliott at times has received his critics this season, and I understand at times he has underwhelmed, but there is obvious talent in him, and he loves the club, and all those little intangible things do matter. There is this real desire to improve. I sense whenever he speaks and whenever we see him play, he never hides. He always shows for the ball. And I just think that we have to reward that. We have to reward these players who are working hard, who are fighting for the shirt, and Bacetic did the same on Tuesday. So reward players that are playing well. hope they continue to just show out well for us, and hopefully we can win games and go on a run.
That is the hope of all of us. We're going to win, Harriet. What do you think?
Yeah, we're going to win. I put that comment without seeing them calling Gakpo too slow. Do we really know that yet? I feel like we need to give him a bit of time before we judge, but I think we're going to win. Yeah, I go into every game with this eternal optimism, and sometimes they disappoint me within 3 minutes. But let's hope that's not the way this weekend. I'm feeling confident.
Are we going to win? I mean, they can't roll into a Boss Kids night on the back of anything else, can they? It's the most important day in the calendar. So yeah, we're going to win.
That's it. We're going to win. We're going to win. And like I say, I've got to go and sing tomorrow before the game and get people off. I'm not going to go on stage and start, thinking let's play for a draw or anything like that. I want to win every single game, and I'm a little bit of a hoper as well. I do think we'll sort it out. And tomorrow's the starting point in there.
Where are you playing?
The Sandon before. I play the Sandon before every game, don't I? So it's an early start tomorrow. So brekkie and then Si Senor at full belt.
Brilliant.
What time's an acceptable beer time for a 12:30 kickoff? That's the question.
I don't know. I'm in the car.
Mike, if you want to answer either, what's the score going to be, or what is the acceptable beer time? Feel free to answer even one.
But for 12:30, as soon as you wake up, I guess is the answer. There are no rules when it comes to 12:30
breakfast.
Yeah, breakfast. Have a drink for breakfast. Who knows? Scoreline. I'm gonna be optimistic because I do think we're gonna win the game. But I'm gonna say it's gonna be an emphatic 1-0 win. I think it's gonna be a 1-0 win where we feel like it should have been more. So I'm gonna go 1-0.
There we are. Harriet's got a mate staying from uni this weekend, so I reckon she'll be just getting in at 12:30 tomorrow. But we shall see. Start drinking Friday night. No, I'm sure that's not the case. Listen, hope you've all enjoyed that. Thanks a lot to the people who came in and did the inserts earlier in the week, and obviously to my panel, to Keo, to Harriet, and to Mike. Harriet has been producing as well because she's an all-round superstar. So thanks very much to all of you. Hope you have a fantastic weekend. Let's hope the Reds started